Good morning and welcome. This is Debbie Oldham from Governance Services. Under Agenda Item 1, Councillor Andrew Hutchison was nominated as Chair prior to the start of the meeting. Are all members in agreement? Thank you. Members are nodding. Right then, so Councillor Hutchison has now been formally elected as Chair for this meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Debbie. Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to this remote hearing of the Licensing Subcommittee. My name is Councillor Hutchison. I'll be chairing today's hearing. Before I proceed further, can I remind everybody that today's meeting is being streamed on the Leeds City Council YouTube channel. And could I ask the following members of the subcommittee to introduce themselves? Councillor Bithell.
Good morning, Councillor Hannah Bithell representing Kirkstall.
Thanks. And Councillor Ray?
Councillor Paul Ray representing Consulate and Riverside Ward.
Thank you. I'd like to start the hearing today by confirming that this meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee meets the requirements of the Council's constitution, even though members of the panel are in remote attendance. While items today will be fully discussed as is usual, remote attendance requires a few slight changes as to how we will manage the debate. Therefore, can all attendees mute their microphone unless I invite them to speak? This will avoid disruption from background noise. Can all participants please keep their cameras on during the hearing? And all participants will be invited to introduce themselves at the start of the hearing to make it clear to public observers who will be involved in the proceedings. I ask for your assistance and patience while I go through this process. Could I now invite officers to introduce themselves and mute your microphone once you've introduced yourself. And I'll start with Rob Brown, Legal Services.
Good morning, I'm a solicitor in Legal Services. I'm here to support Philippa Murray, the legal advisor today.
Thanks, Robert. And Matthew Nelson, Entertainment Licensing.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Matthew, part of Entertainment Licensing, and today I'm supported by my colleague Samantha Longfellow-Pennicott. Thank you.
Thanks, Matthew. Thanks, Samantha. Debbie Oldham, Governance Services.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Debbie Oldham, I'm Governance Services, and I'm the clerk today. And I think we still need to have Philippa introduce herself as well, Chair.
Yeah, and Philippa from Legal Services.
Good morning, it's Philippa Murray. I'm a solicitor in Legal Services and I'm advisor to the subcommittee this morning.
Okay, then can I also have the applicant and the representatives to introduce themselves, please? I believe we have Christopher Rees-Gay.
Sorry, Chair. Yes, Chris Rees-Gay from Pinson Masons representing Tesco's. We've got Hardish Purell, licensing manager at Tesco's, and then Richard Mills, the DPS and store manager also.
Okay, thanks ever so much. And then could I also ask the objector to the application to introduce themselves? Councillor Dobson.
Good morning, Chair. I've just had to reposition myself away from my dog that's decided to start barking at everybody, but I do apologise for that. Morning, everybody. I'm Councillor Mark Dobson. I represent the Garforth and Swillington ward, and I'll be here this morning to speak against the proposal that's been put forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Dobson. Could I now ask the clerk if you can go through agenda items 2 to 5, please, Debbie?
Thank you, Chair. Agenda item 2, there are no appeals against the refusal of inspection of documents. Item 3, there is no exempt information on this agenda. Agenda item 4, there are no late items that I'm aware of. And agenda item 5, could I ask members if they have any disclosable pecuniary interest to declare?
None from myself.
No.
And Councillor Ray's shaking his head.
Lovely, thank you. That's it. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so we're moving on to agenda item number 6, which is the application to vary a premises license held by Tesco, 11 Longmeadow Gate, Garforth, Leeds, LS25 2BX. Could the legal advisor to the subcommittee please outline the procedure for the hearing?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Chair. The usual procedure in such an application is that the applicant addresses the committee first. And after that, any other parties who have indicated an intention to speak at the hearing would address the committee. Here, there are no representations from any responsible authority. So on this occasion, we'll move to Councillor Dobson, who represents members of the local community who gave objections to the application. The applicant has the chance to respond to anything said by other parties. In making its determination, the subcommittee will consider what is appropriate and proportionate to promote those licensing objectives, namely the prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, the prevention of public nuisance, and the protection of children from harm. In relation to time limits, the regulations permit the subcommittee to set a time limit on presentations, providing the same time limit is applied to each party. Our usual time limit is 15 minutes per party. The applicant may wish to split their allocation between their initial presentation and response to the other party. For example, 10 minutes initially and 5 minutes at the end as a summing up. Could I perhaps ask the applicant's representative and the other parties and Councillor Dobson, do you think 15 minutes will be sufficient for your presentation to the committee? Perhaps Mr. Rees-Gray first, if you would.
Yes, it will be. Yes, thank you.
And Councillor Dobson, will 15 minutes be adequate for you?
Yes, thank you. That'd be more than adequate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Chair, is that acceptable? Is it do you wish to impose a time limit of 15 minutes for parties to address the committee?
I think both of them have indicated that there'll be less than 15 minutes, so that's fine by me.
Thank you. So a time limit of 15 minutes in that case. After each presentation, the subcommittee members may wish to ask questions of the party. The time for questions to be asked and answered is in addition to the time limit set for the presentation. Can I perhaps ask Mr. Rees-Gray, do you want to split the time that's allotted to you so that you have an initial address and then a period to sum up?
Yes, I'll have a brief summary if that's all right, please.
Thank you. And do you know at the moment how long you would want initially and how long later, or do you want to see how you?
I'd have thought roughly 12 minutes for the presentation and then 2 or 3 minutes for summing up, please.
Thank you very much. In relation to cross-examination, we don't permit cross-examination in subcommittee. If any party feels that there is a crucial question that should be asked and answered, please don't ask the person directly, but make a request to the chair, who will decide whether or not the question should be put. Parties may request permission to call witnesses. Can I ask, does either party have any witnesses to call today? Mr. Rees-Gray.
No, I have Hardish and Richard here to answer any questions that the committee may have of them. They won't be speaking directly.
Thank you. And Councillor Dobson, do you have any witnesses to call?
No, this morning it will just be myself speaking on behalf of residents. Thank you.
Thank you. All documents have been previously submitted. They've been copied and circulated to the subcommittee in advance of the meeting. Everybody should, I hope, have the same pack, which I think has got 48 pages altogether. If people could perhaps just check that that is what they have available to them. Does anyone have anything different to a 48-page agenda? I'll take it that we all have the same pack in that case. It would be helpful if you are referring to documents to identify which document you're mentioning by the page number. Additional documents may now only be tabled with the consent of each of the parties. Is there any additional document that either party wishes to refer to during the meeting?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Councillor Dobson, thank you. Please do note that your presentation is your only opportunity to address the subcommittee, so you do need to make sure that you have included in your presentation everything that you want to say and to have taken into account by the subcommittee. After the parties have made their presentations and after any questions, the members will consider whether they have all the information they require to make the decision. Once this point is reached, members of the committee will go into a private session. If members have additional questions to ask, they will return to the meeting in order to ask those questions. They will then go back into private session to make the decision. Could all parties remain in the meeting until they are asked to leave? All parties will be informed once the hearing is ended and will be advised of the decision in writing within 5 working days of today. Are there any questions or representations about the procedure that we propose to follow just before we do begin the hearing? I'll take that as a no. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Philippa. Can I ask the licensing officer, please, to present today's application?
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Chair. So today members are asked to consider an application to vary a premise licence made by Tesco Stores Limited for Tesco 11 Longmeadow Gate, Garforth, Leeds, LS25. The application was originally made to vary the licence to increase the sale of alcohol consumption off the premises Monday to Sunday from 6 AM till midnight. During the application process, however, the applicant has reduced the terminal hour for the sale of alcohol. This is now as applied for as Monday to Sunday from 6 AM until 11 PM. The other aspects of the application to vary the licence remain as existing. These include the removal of all embedded restrictions that carried over from the Justice off licence during the transitional phase, and an update to the layout of the premises in accordance with the plan that's been submitted with the application and also circulated to the licensing subcommittee in advance of this morning's hearing. Further details on the proposed operating schedule, including the steps to promote the licensing objectives at section M of the application form, can be viewed in a copy of the full application on page 15 of the report at Appendix B. So the application has not attracted any representations from responsible authorities. However, it has attracted 8 individual representations from local residents, all expressing concerns in relation to public nuisance. Redacted copies of these representations can be seen at Appendix E, starting on page 37 of the report, whilst original copies have been circulated prior to the hearing. Finally, we have Councillor Mark Dobson in attendance for today's hearing, who has indicated to the licensing authority that he has been approached and requested to represent the views of local residents. And that, Chair, is an outline of the application. Thank you.
Thanks, Matthew. Okay, could I invite the applicant, please, to present their case?
Chair, thank you. So in my presentation, I'll cover the following 4 areas: a brief background of Tesco, the application itself, the representations, and then a final short summary. So today, we're seeking, as Matthew's outlined, the granting of the application in line with the revised hours, so that's 0600 to 2300 daily, with an update to the plan and the removal of the old embedded restrictions found at page 9 of your agenda. So by way of background for Tesco's is a national retailer that sells alcohol as part of a broad offering of goods and services. Tesco's has over 3,400 stores with premises licenses, and of those, 2,000 of those are express stores, very similar to the style and format of this one. In Tesco's, there are 300,000 members of staff that sell alcohol and are all trained extensively within the licensing policies and due diligence processes that Tesco's have. There are approximately 500 million alcohol transactions conducted by Tesco's each year. And in terms of individual store turnovers between 7 and 15% is made up of alcohol sales. Tesco's was the first supermarket and one of the very first retail operators to run its own British Institute of Innkeeping accredited training centre with a recognised level that Tesco's got of excellent. In terms of training, there are written training policies and formal training programs in all stores that sell alcohol, which ensures that staff are equipped to meet and promote all of the licensing objectives. Training is carried out with every individual member of staff when they're inducted, and then refresher training takes place twice a year before Easter and before Christmas, if there are any major changes to legislation. Training is undertaken by way of formal training package, which includes direct one-to-one training, as well as also online via an interactive system, not just a tick box system. The express format then, the subject of this application is an express store. Express stores are designed to be convenience stores for local people in the surrounding area. Not only are the customers local, but also so the staff, with the majority of the 17 being employed being local residents themselves. In terms of the DPS, that's Richard, and he's on this call, Richard Milnes. He's the store manager and has been for 4 years, having held his personal license for 4 years and been in the industry for 20 years. Normally, if we were at City Hall in Leeds, we'd have introduced Richard to the residents that objected to give out a contact number for him, and I will do that online. I'll email licensing and give that detail later, so that should there be any issues moving forward, they have a direct point of contact, or indeed they can come into the store to meet with Richard. In terms of the community, community is a very big part of the Tesco ethos, and it is an active member of the community. Indeed, community relations is one of the 6 key performance indicators of each store, and so real focus is put on that. A key part of that prior to COVID was the Tesco's bags of help. You'll have seen that, you'll have given your blue token, you'll drop it into one of 3 local charities within the region. So this was the Leeds region, and up to every 3 months there would be a grant of £4,000 split between those 3 charities or people who local support was going to be given. Unfortunately, due to COVID and the touching blue cones, this has not happened, and instead this money that has been raised from people buying carrier bags still has been used as emergency COVID funds, whereby people have applied for grants for these monies. So from that Leeds fund, Age UK Leeds has been given £500, HFT Leeds has been given £500, to Gemma's Hospice, First Kirksall Brownies, and the Pudsy's Live at Home scheme have all received those funds from the recent batch. So there is also a community board within the shop that informs the locals of what is going on in the area. Not just specific to this store, but there's also the Community Food Connection, whereby Tesco's award-winning scheme since 2016 has given away 38 million meals, working with 7,000 charities in order to assist those homeless people. Specific food donations and food banks that this store gives to is the Bishop Young Academy and the Real Junk Food Project. Turning now then to the application. As stated, 3 elements to this: the updating of the current layout plan, the removal of the embedded restrictions, and then the contentious issue, the variation of the hours. So in terms of the hours, again, just by way of reminder, these have been revised now to 0600 to 2300 hours daily. So in terms of the reasoning and the rationale for this, they're twofold. So obviously convenience is at the heart of this application. Currently the store opens at 0600 and closes at 2300, and therefore this variation is to marry the two, so that people, when they come in the morning, currently if they come in between 0600 and 0800, they're unable to purchase alcohol. So there have been requests for these hours to be made so that people don't have to come back twice in a day, and we would say very pertinent within these COVID times that people's interaction in the shops is limited to just one trip per day. So this is for late night shift workers, for taxi drivers and the like. And Tesco's don't see massive volumes of trade coming in these times, but it's purely for convenience. The second reason is that the hours applied for bring the store in line with Tesco's Express stores across the country. This store previously being a one-stop and transitioning to a Tesco's Express this February. So as the committee will no doubt be aware, as per paragraph 1015 of the current section 182 guidance, and indeed paragraph 613 of your own statement of licensing policy, shops, stores and supermarkets should normally be free to provide sales of alcohol for consumption off the premises at any time when the retail outlet is open for shopping, unless there are good reasons based on the licensing objectives for restricting these hours. As has been alluded to, the responsible authorities have all been provided with a copy of the application, and as you're aware, none have sought to put in a representation. We would say that this is a sign of the confidence they have in Tesco's as an operator in their ability to promote all of the licensing objectives. In terms of the representations, there have been 8. I won't deal with each of them individually, but have sought to deal with the points that have been raised throughout. So in terms of devaluation of property, this isn't a relevant consideration for the committee today. It simply doesn't relate to the licensing objectives. In relation to the alleged increase in noise until midnight, as you're aware, this is now not the case with the variation. The variation seeks to go to 2300 hours only. The extra morning hours, as we say, are for those shoppers that already use the store, but unfortunately have been told that they can't purchase alcohol in those times. So again, we don't envisage anything extra coming from those. In terms of the alleged increases in truck volume, noise and pollution, as stated previously, the store is already open from 0600 to 2300, and we can categorically say that there are no extra deliveries to support the sale of alcohol between the extra hours in the morning that are being applied for. When the one-stop operated, so just to give a background in terms of the deliveries, when the one-stop operated the store, there was a 7-day delivery pattern in place for both chilled and ambient goods. And then when the store was transferred and reopened as a Tesco's Express this February, Tesco's sought to consolidate that and move to 4 ambient deliveries during the week, Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays and Saturdays, and 6 chilled deliveries, obviously because you need daily chilled deliveries Monday to Saturday. Unfortunately then COVID kicked in, and to meet the demand and to stop the emergency panic buying, the delivery times became all skew whiff, and deliveries were coming in as and when to meet the demands of those customers in those times. But however, more recently, it has moved back to the delivery program of 6 and 4. The next point mentioned was need, and as covered in paragraph 14.19 of the section 182 guidance, need concerns the commercial demand and is a matter for the planning authority and for the market. The committee will no doubt be aware that need, therefore, is not a matter for the consideration today. In relation to the odd gathering of young people, an alleged increase in antisocial behaviour, as set out in Ms Purewell's letter, Tesco's were not aware of any antisocial behaviour associated with the store, but are happy to work with the community and the local police. And indeed, should any issues be raised, as mentioned previously, please do come and see Richard himself, who will look to address these issues. It should be noted, obviously, that the car park is shared with other shops and stores, and indeed the pub also to its front. There was a point raised in relation to the concern to the changes in delivery planning hours. This purely is an application as set out in the 3 elements. This is nothing to do with planning and licensing purely. So Tesco's can confirm that it has nothing to do with the planning hours and does not indeed wish to change the planning hours at all. And therefore we would say this is not a consideration for the committee today. As stated previously, in terms of the regime, there has been a transition from one-stop, and indeed with the changes in COVID, there have been issues with some of the delivery times. the store, as per Ms. Purewell's letter, has apologised for the issues associated with COVID and the ad hoc delivery times. And indeed, the store is aware of recently there have been a number of deliveries come at incorrect times, and they follow Tesco protocol and turn these away. However, with the COVID changes again, some timings may slip, as it were, but they are certainly doing the best that they can in this current climate to ensure that the needs of the customers are met. In terms of an alleged increase in litter, there's a concern that the increase in hours will increase the litter again. The hours aren't increasing for the opening of the store, and it can be confirmed that there is a Tesco's litter bin that is cleaned and emptied every day, and indeed, should it ever be seen to be overflowing, a member of staff would change this. Chair, you no doubt the committee will be aware of the Daniel Thwaites case, and we would confirm that the decision that you make must be assessed on the actual evidence before you today. And we would say that in terms of evidence, there is none. These are all allegations of what may happen. Chair, these are my submissions for the moment. Should you have any questions, Hardish and Richard are on hand. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Would members like to ask questions now, or would you rather listen to the objectors first?
The objectors first, please, Chair.
Agreed.
Okay, great, that's thanks. Okay, over to you, Councillor Dobson, if you can give your representation, please.
Yes, hello again, colleagues. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak this morning on behalf of residents. I think the first thing, it is only fair, right and proper to set some context around this. And I think that the gentleman who has just made the submission in his opening remarks around how Tesco interacts with the broader community is very fair and accurate. And I also think for balance, it is important to say that during the COVID pandemic and before, Tesco have been a particularly good neighbour in terms of the philanthropic work they do in the community. And during COVID, especially at the main store, which sits on the Wakefield Aberford Road on the A642, they have been exemplary in terms of supporting local charitable objectives, and I can really find no fault in that regard. So I'm not going to paint a picture this morning that Tesco is a large corporation, somehow the work of the devil. None of those things will be relevant, and I do think it's important to add that balance at the top of the conversation. I think the problem with this application in itself, and that's what we are looking at today, is around the fact that, yes, I think it's significant that the original proposal in terms of 6 AM until midnight has been reduced to 2300 hours, in line with the store opening hours per se. But I also think that the challenge for Tesco to demonstrate this morning, perhaps to members, is that this will not have a detrimental effect in terms of the Licensing Act of 2005. It seems to me somewhat of a leap to suggest that simply because the hours are not increasing, then somehow that the current situation will not be worsened by the addition of the sale of alcohol until 11 PM, because I think it's fair to say, and I am one of these people, I live on the estate adjacent, although not in terms that it would have any detrimental impact on me personally. And yes, on the odd occasion, if I've needed a loaf of bread or some milk, I've popped out to the Tesco Express. What I haven't done is gone to buy alcohol within what would be considered the extra hours. And I think that the real concern of residents is that this will not just be an enhancement for people who are the existing footfall, it will attract a new footfall. And it is the view of residents that that new potential footfall will have a detrimental impact in terms of the Licensing Act, especially around antisocial behaviour, noise nuisance, and impact on children. And I make that point because you've obviously all had the opportunity to look at the geographical location of this store on your maps. It is contiguous to Longmeadow Gate and sits in front of the cul-de-sac on Cotswold Drive. So this is a store that is actually at the periphery of a very large, fully occupied residential estate, which does include obviously children and vulnerable adults. Again, to suggest that the car park is somehow in joint use and therefore it would be impossible to attach a responsibility to Tesco is something at the moment. I am absolutely convinced it's not an attempt to mislead the panel, but it is in fact not the case because, of course, at the time of night where this contentious increase in potential alcohol sales would take place, there would be no other business or people visiting any other business other than the Tesco Express. And I include, of course, the Crusader pub, because as colleagues are fully aware, the pub now has to close at 10 p.m. And let's face some very awkward facts. That could be a situation for some considerable time. The gentleman also alluded in his statement to need and representations around the community wanting this. Obviously, it is not for me to cross-examine, but the panel may wish to drill down into that and actually elaborate as to where these requests have come from. I also think it's important for members to be mindful that there is a larger parent Tesco store, 1.5 miles from this particular store. At that store, there is no impact on any residential amenity. There is a large private car park, which the parent store has exclusivity over. And I am of the opinion that there would be absolutely no impact upon any element of the 2005 Licensing Act. And whilst I'm not here to say this morning that I'm comparing like to another organisation, it's the same organisation that has the opportunity in the town currently to ply their trade and offer people who would, let's face facts, because taxi drivers have been alluded to, they would offer people driving the opportunity to access another store within a perfectly reasonable distance, in fact, within the same community. I also think that it is important for members to consider the geographic location, which simply does not lend itself easily for people to access it other than car late on the evenings, as it sits contiguous with the A63. So again, if it does bring in passing trade, that will be trade that is coming in by car. Cars make noises, doors slam, that cannot be avoided, but also in terms of the Licensing Act and detriment to children living on the estate, especially as it is Monday to Sunday, which takes into account schools and school times. I do think that is something that the panel may wish to consider. A lot was mentioned around COVID, and it has been a huge bone of contention that the deliveries to Tesco during COVID have been somewhat erratic, to say the least, and have had a huge detrimental impact on the residential amenity. I accept that stores had to be stocked, but I would also say, just as an addition to that, I understand the gentleman has said that this has now been addressed, but only as early as last week I was still getting matters of deliveries coming out of agreed times. And let's face facts, it's all well and good for the store to say they're turning delivery drivers away, but the delivery driver has still had to access the area. It's still caused noise and nuisance. So I really don't think that's relevant, except to say that I would hope the store would realise that this build up, this cumulative effect of noise and disruption would only be enhanced if the panel see fit to allow this extra hour for people to access alcohol. Finally, I am deeply concerned around the issue of the fact that pubs are shutting at 10 o'clock. And is it in anybody's interests, and this is where the Licensing Act becomes extremely relevant, to say, okay, the pub's shut at 10. What do we do now? Where do we go access alcohol for another hour? Let's go to Tesco in the middle of a residential estate. I don't think that is in anybody's interests, and I do not think you have to take a massive leap of faith or understanding to see that that could potentially have a huge detrimental impact on residents and the residential amenity at a time when the forethought of all our views is around protecting public health, making sure that at 10 o'clock people disperse from places where they can obtain alcohol in a safe way to really protect public health. And I think in terms of that, there is definitely a linkage to the 2005 Licensing Act in terms of public health and well-being, especially around children and minors. So for all those things, panel, I do think it's important to completely reiterate Tesco are a good neighbour, a valued member of the community and a responsible provider. But in terms of this particular application to increase these hours, I think for the reasons outlined, I'm hoping the panel would agree that on this occasion, and certainly while we have the restriction on public houses at 10 o'clock, it's rejected. And I'll leave it there. Thank you for your indulgence and patience.
Thanks, Councillor Dobson. Do members have any questions for the applicant or respondent? Councillor Bithell.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to clarify, there was a lot of discussion in that presentation about late night sales. Can I just clarify that other than Sunday, where there's half an hour change, the late night hours are now, because of the change that's been agreed in the last week or so with Tesco's, aren't actually changing and they're staying at 11 and were previously 11 o'clock, please?
That's quite correct, Councillor Bithell. Yes, we had 2300 Monday to Saturday. The only extension in the evening would be that Sunday for 30 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, Councillor Bithell? Do you have anything more, Councillor Bithell? No other questions? Councillor Ray?
No, I have no questions, Chair.
No? I have a few questions, if it's okay. The other Tesco Express stores that are within the Leeds area, do they have a similar license to what you have operating now, or do they operate under the the expected variation hours?
Chair, my belief, and I'll get Hardy, Ms Purell to confirm, is that they all try and sell alcohol to the opening hours that they've got. So if planning have restricted them to a 7 AM 2300, they will have 07 to 2300. But they, across the sort of 2000 stores, the norm we would say would be 06 to 2300 or later. Ms Purell, I wondered if you could just confirm that for me.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Yeah, that's absolutely right. So we try and match our licensed hours to our trading hours. So some stores will trade from 7 until 11 or 6 till midnight. So we'll match our licensing hours to that.
Okay, so is this a case of bringing this store in line with all the other stores, or are there any others apart from people that are asking for it to be able to purchase alcohol between 6 o'clock and 8 o'clock in the morning? Is it a case of bringing it in line with the other stores?
Yes, Chair.
Sorry, I was going to say the same thing. Yeah, it is a case of bringing it in line with our trading hours, and that's what we generally do as Tesco. So this move from a one-stop to the Tesco brand, and as a part of it, that's what we've done and requested.
Okay, and then you're also asking for the variation to remove the embedded conditions, of which one of them is to be able to serve alcohol in an open container. Any sort of reasoning behind removing the embedded?
Sorry, Chair, the thinking behind what that was because they were from the old Justices licenses and it was just to modernise them, that was all.
And again, so then that would then also be in line with all the other Tesco Express stores in the Leeds area? That's
correct. If you put in a new application, you certainly wouldn't be putting in the embedded restrictions. They're very old when the transition took place.
Okay. And part of the variation as well is a change of the layout of the store. Are there any major changes to the actual display of the alcohol in the new layout?
No, none, Chair. So just in summary, there are two, sorry for the change, is two self-service tills, the installation of a Costa coffee machine, and the aligning at the back of the store of the 4Rs so that they're straight in line. That's all. It's very, very minor.
Okay, so the view of the alcohol is kind of staying the same as what it is now.
Sorry, yes, exactly the same on that back wall next to the service point. Yes, no change at all.
Okay, and obviously right next door is the Crusader Public House. Have there been any incidents that we're aware of or that have been reported to yourselves regarding antisocial behaviour in the car park or out of hours, people maybe you can be between Tesco's and the Crusaders?
Chair, as far as I'm aware, the answer is definitely no to that, but I would just ask Richard just to confirm that for you.
Richard?
Yeah, there's been no incidents that I'm aware of.
And can you, would you go along those lines as well, Councillor Dobson?
In absolute fairness, Chair, the last time I had any incident of antisocial behaviour at either establishment, but certainly the Crusader, was several years ago. The pub is a very quiet pub, actually, at the moment, I think for obvious reasons, but no, I can confirm that too.
Okay, and then just, I guess, one last question from myself. You mentioned that it's requested often for people to be able to purchase alcohol during the opening hours rather than licensing hours. How many requests would you say on a weekly basis you get for people to purchase alcohol between 6 o'clock and 8 o'clock when they currently can't?
I would say there's probably just a couple each day, so about a dozen a week.
Right. Okay. And that alcohol, would it be someone coming home from work on a late shift buying a bottle of wine, or are we talking about different?
Yeah. It's somebody that they could have just finished a night shift, or they've just taxi driver just finished the shift or wherever, and they just want a bottle of wine, or they want a 4-pack of beer or something.
Right.
Chair, it is, Chair, very much that convenience issue so that they don't have to come back again a second time.
Right, okay. So it's not that we're dealing with cans of special brew at 6 o'clock in the morning and stuff like that?
Certainly not, Chair. No, this is, as has been outlined and as Councillor Dobson said, very much a residential area with no antisocial behaviour issues whatsoever.
Okay. Okay, that's all the questions I have. Councillor Bithell, Councillor Ray, do you have any more questions you'd like to come with?
No, Chair.
No, my other one was just going to be about the embedded conditions. So you covered that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, excellent. So the subcommittee will now move to private session to deliberate on the application.
Chair, would I be able to, sorry to interrupt, would I just be able to make a few points
you're summing up.
Yeah, just in relation to Mr. Dobson's points, and then a brief summary.
Sorry, yeah.
So in relation to Councillor Dobson's points, and as clarified by Councillor Bithell, the evening hours are not changing whatsoever. They're 2300 still. In respect to the morning hours, the 6 till 8, as we've just discussed, we're not expecting any new footfall for that, so we don't envisage any increase of antisocial behaviour, noise, or issues in terms of children per se. It is for, as has been outlined, those shift workers, taxi drivers who've just finished and don't want to have to come back to the store twice. We won't actually be advertising that the hours have changed. They will just come into force should the application be granted, and indeed we'll keep an eye on those. In terms of me making the committee aware of the proximity to the Crusader, it was in relation to the alleged antisocial behaviour in the evening, but as Councillor Dobson has alluded to, he's unaware also of any within the last couple of years. In relation to Councillor Dobson's points in relation to other Tesco stores, we would say that this is not relevant. Every application should be taken on its merits. In terms of the sort of the planning, the cumulative effect, we have confirmed and can confirm that if the extra hours are granted in the morning, there won't be any associated extra deliveries for this. They will come in the deliveries that there are. In relation to pubs shutting earlier, again, we would say every application on its merits. Tesco's are trained and have extensive training policies in place that do cover Section 141 of the Act, that alcohol shouldn't be served to drunks, and therefore we do not envisage that this is an issue either. So, Chair, in terms of a very brief summary, we would say that Tesco's are a premium operator with well-trained staff who will and can promote the licensing objectives. Importantly, there are no representations from the responsible authorities, that's environmental health and the police to note in particular. To accommodate and be a good neighbour, the hours have been varied and reduced back to 2300 due to the concerns raised. Richard, the store manager, will give out his details and is more than happy to meet with local residents in order to discuss any issues. As per the Thwaites case, again, the decision to be granted should be assessed on the evidence before you, and therefore we would ask that the variation be granted as applied for the hours 0600 to 2300 with the amendments to the plan and indeed the removal of the restriction of the embedded restrictions. Chair, those are my submissions. Hardish and, sorry, Ms. Puriwell and Richard Mills on hand, should you have anything further.
Chair, could I just add something very quickly? The reps have been put by the residents. If Councillor Dobson, I mean, if we can pick up a dialogue, because I don't want those to go ignored either. So if we could pick up a dialogue and use this opportunity to either have a Zoom call with them, because that's the way we're working at the moment, so that they can raise any concerns, not just those that you've raised here, because we are about being a good neighbour. So, you know, that's fundamental to our policy. So if there's any niggles, we want them to be sorted out rather than not. Sorry to jump in.
No worries at all. Okay, yeah, thanks
Chair,
very much.
Would you mind just indulging me for just 2 seconds? I don't want to stray too far from what we're here to discuss this morning, but if the lady who's kindly just made that offer would firm something up with me in the form of an email, whatever the outcome of this morning's hearing, I would be grateful and see that as a very positive way forward.
Absolutely happy to do that. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, so now, as long as Councillor Ray and Councillor Berthel have no further questions, no. The subcommittee will now move to private session where we can deliberate the application. Could I ask that all parties, including the applicant and their representatives and the licensing officer, remain available should the subcommittee have any additional questions. If there are any additional questions, you'll be invited back into the meeting room by the clerk. Over to you, Debbie.
Right, thank you. The members are now going to go into a breakout room. If everybody within this meeting could just stay where they are, and then we will get back to you with any other questions or if we need to finish off. Okay, thank you.
Is everybody back in?
It looks as though we're all back in, apart from Robert Brown.
It took a while for us to get to the actual breakout room, so it might be just a couple of moments.
Yeah.
But-
Oh, he's here.
Oh, there we
I
go.
can see him. There we go. We're all back in now, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thanks everybody for your patience. Thanks as well for attending today. It took a little bit longer than expected in the breakout room. We're just looking at the embedded condition side of things, but I can say that yeah, again, thank you for your attendance today and for your patience, and that it concludes the business for today. And then all parties will be informed of the decision within 5 working days. That concludes today's meeting. Thank you very much.